All right, guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the True Sports Physical Therapy Podcast. You are in for a treat. My conversation with the legendary Joe DeFranco was eye-opening. We covered so many fascinating topics like how to be efficient with your programming, how to program outstanding warm-ups for your rehab and performance needs. Joe does a great job of going through his entire backstory. He started with a hole in the wall and grew into a household name. If you don't know who Joe DeFranco is, look him up now. If you haven't taken his programming, Team Forever Strong, I highly recommend it. It's thoughtful, it's individualized. He is a super communicator like you're about to hear. So make sure you check all of his programming out. Please enjoy this episode. Share it with whoever can benefit from it. I look forward to your feedback. Without further ado, here's the legendary Joe DeFranco. Welcome back to the True Sports Physical Therapy Podcast. We got another legend with us. One of my heroes, been following his programming for a long time. I'm working like hell, Joe DeFranco, on becoming not a skinny bastard. Thank you for all your Forever Strong programming. It's just such an awesome workout. Anyone who's listening to this needs to get onto this program, at least try it out, because it is a testament to Joe's obsession with efficiency and maximizing your time in the gym. I have loved it. Whole bunch of my patients and athletes have loved it. Joe, give us some background, because in prepping for this conversation, you went from a 500 square foot gym in God knows where into the pinnacle of our career of strength and conditioning and performance training. Just walk me through some highlights on how you went from 500 square feet to what you're doing today.
I think you almost summed it up already. It was my obsession with just training and helping people is what made that take place, because I had no business background, marketing, sales, none of that stuff. I was just someone who played football growing up, was obsessed with football and training to get better at football and hopefully someday make the NFL. That didn't work out like it doesn't for 99.99% of the population that plays any sport. I kind of going into the PT world, just as a side note, for those who don't know my story, I actually developed a tumor in my sacrum my senior year in high school, which went misdiagnosed for 5 years, even though I was in excruciating pain. Literally woke up one morning, football camp, senior year, and this pain in my back and nerve pain shooting down my leg that I just assumed was something that happened at training camp the day before. But 5 years, it doesn't go away. So, I mean, in and out of doctors and surgeries and PTs. So that's just a little bit of a background of how I started respecting that world a little more, to not just the meathead, get bigger, get stronger, get faster, but also if you're not healthy, none of that shit matters. I use the term a lot. The greatest ability is availability. When you're in pain and you can't move well, none of the shit we do in the weight room is really going to matter. And it could actually take away from our ability to do whatever it is we want to do. So going through all that, being obsessed with all that, officially having my career end, and then saying, what the hell else am I going to do with my life? I didn't have any money. So I find the literal storage closet in the gym that I worked out at when I was on break in college, and I would come home for summer break, winter break. I got to know the gym owner. I knew that there was a closet in the downstairs of that gym that was just used for storing old broken equipment. I asked the owner if I could rent that space, and I literally just started, training what started out as a couple high school kids from my old high school. They saw incredible results because, again, I lived training. Like, I didn't have a girlfriend, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids. I was just a dude that was obsessed with going to the gym, training clients, and then getting home at 10, 11 o'clock at night and writing programs and researching and just obsessing. And my clientele started with 4 high school kids. Then it was a couple dozen high school kids. Then a couple college kids came in. A couple of those college kids ended up going to the NFL. And before you know it, 3 to 4 years into my storage closet gym, I have a packed closet slash gym full of high school, college, and professional athletes. I had 11 guys from the New York Giants training in a storage closet. And I just grew out of it. The rest is history, as they say. It exploded. I went into a bigger facility, grew out of that in 3 years, went into a bigger facility, grew out of that in 3 years, and then kind of my ultimate facility. Now I've gone full circle and I'm back in a smaller, kind of more manageable facility. But that's the quick rundown of the last 25 years in business, 27 years in business for me.
Well, that's really incredible. I mean, it's a story I can relate to. Like when I started True Sports, I found what was then a Polish Orthodox church that had been converted into a performance facility, rented a room in the back, just got started from there. I had no visions of what True Sports would become, like what we're doing here. Now we got 15 locations and 70 physical therapists, and sky's the limit. Did you have any idea that you were headed towards what you got going on now?
No, because I was so, and I think this is a good lesson because, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. I just share what worked for me. People talk about having a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and I do think that is great to plan ahead and have a vision. But I had tunnel vision. Like I just cared about my clients that day, giving them the best possible workout and experience at my gym as possible. I didn't think about tomorrow. I didn't think about next week. It was just, who am I training today? I'm going to give them the best possible experience. They're going to walk out of here better than they came. And then next thing, when you do that, a month goes by, 6 months go by, a year go by, and holy shit, all these like little skinny bastard high school kids are now pretty jacked bastards, like walking around with DeFranco's t-shirts on, and all their friends at school are saying, dude, what is that? What is DeFranco's? Is it a gym? Because it doesn't have its own spot. There's like this shady back room in the basement of that gym, in Waldwick, New Jersey. Is that where it is? Like, what are you guys doing back there? Because everyone that goes there transforms. It's like this. It was like the underground Fight Club before the Fight Club movie existed. And I was just so engrossed in the day-to-day. Things like opportunities would happen, but I can't take credit and say I planned for them. All I cared about was doing right by my clients, getting the best results possible. And by doing that, opportunities came with professional organizations and bigger facilities and endorsement deals with different companies and podcasts, and all of my opportunities came from me just being obsessed with being great at one thing.
Okay, I got 2 questions that come out of a story like that. Number one, that sounds awesome. It sounds like hard work, focus on what's in front of you, all ended up driving business up and to the right. So my question there is, give me a mistake. Usually I save this for the end of the pod, but like, where did you like trip over yourself and like, Jesus Christ, if I had to do it again, I would have done it totally differently. That's question one. Question two is, now that you have this big business, I'm going to assume, my mom always said, don't count other people's money, but you got a lot going on. You're pretty successful. How do you balance that? Hey, I know what got me to this point, or at some point, was the focus on the here and now. I'm not really looking down the road, but now you got this big business and you have to look down the road and you have to plan and how do you balance those two things? So let's start with the first question. Give me a mistake.
So from a business standpoint, because what happened, I never looked at myself as a businessman in the beginning. I was just Joe DeFranco, the coach / personal trainer. But I humbly say, because I was pretty good at that, business grew and I had to become a business owner, entrepreneur. And it's funny because now we have the Iron Business Blueprint, not to get sidetracked, but I take myself and Chris Tutela, my partner, who's been amazing, we help young gym owners not make the same mistakes that I made, and save them a lot of time and money in the process. You could still be, training is always number one, but you want to run your business like a real business, which I did not do in the beginning. And if I could give you a million things, but we'll say just the one biggest one that always stands out to me was not creating systems. So I was doing everything by myself, and calling. I remember at the end of the day, this is when I knew I needed to make a change. When you have a business and you're actually pissed off at the end of the day, when you check your voicemails and you have 16, 18 voicemails from people who are begging to give you money and train with you, and you're looking at it as like a chore. I got to call them back. Like, oh my God, I don't have the time. This is so annoying.
Yep.
We need to make a change in your business, because anyone would die to have that, right? So now when I look back, what we tell all of our young gym owners and personal trainers, create systems for every single thing you do. Create an operations manual, if you will, from when you walk in your gym and you turn the lights on, you unlock the doors, you turn the music on, to a parent walks in your facility and says, hey, tell me a little bit about what do you do here? Like, what do you say to them? Write that all down, create systems, make videos, however you want to do it. Again, I'm not the most tech savvy guy. There's probably easier ways to do it, but I eventually developed an operations manual, start to finish, opening the gym, training, closing the gym, answering the phones. What do you say? Every single thing. Have that in a book, whatever it is. So now when you bring on help, which you will need help eventually, it's not such a chore to bring someone on and now you have to physically do all this stuff. Think of it, although I don't want my gym to be McDonald's, I never aspired to have 1,000 DeFranco's gyms, but run your gym as if you're going to have 1,000 different locations one day. And whether you decide to do that or not, your business will run so much smoother and easier. That's the best advice I could give is create systems along the way. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to be able to duplicate your success. With every person you hire, the quality is going to drop lower and lower because it's going to be a little bit different each time. And then it's like the game of telephone where a couple people deep, it's a completely different system. It's a completely different program. It's a completely different experience from when you were doing it yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I've been there. I can relate to all of those things. Shout out to our COO, Tim Stone. He has really taken on this SOP, knowledge, standard operating procedures, like how we do everything from, like you said, patient calls, how are they scheduled, to how do you interview, etc. Do you do any of that clinically? Like in our world, it'd be clinically like, here's how we rehab an ACL. Here's how we do a rotator cuff repair. The problem with doing that is there's so much art in what we do, right? So how do you juggle that?
Yeah, so yes and no. We have, with our CPPS certification, we definitely have systems and principles that we follow, but we talk about the art of coaching all the time. There's so much nuance to what we do. And when you gain experience in this field, you will see there are a lot of issues that are very common. And how many people come to you, they say, oh, my low back hurts. And right off the bat, there's two or three things in my head, I'm sure your head, that you're going to look at immediately because they're kind of the usual suspects.
Yep.
And there's a lot of overlap with patients and clients, but you also have that rare individual where they complain of low back pain and it's a completely different reason than everyone else that you've treated. I lived through that. I was one of those guys who got treated from what I would consider generic PTs who just heard, oh, low back, he's young, it's a disc, and they treated me the same as the 80-year-old woman with a herniated disc. Meanwhile, I had a tumor growing in my sacrum that was ripping through the bone, and nothing that they were doing helped because I was just treated like everyone else. So with that being my kind of bias and experience, we are very careful not to give very, specific absolutes with our training protocols because we know everyone is an individual. So while we have guidelines and certain principles we follow, we don't give hard, absolutes with different training protocols just because we know everyone's going to be different and you're going to have to make that call on an individual basis. So what we pride ourselves mostly on is, yes, teaching our principles that are pretty tried and true, but teaching coaches and trainers how to think on their feet, how to make quick decisions, how to ask the right questions, and basically how to get better at the art of coaching, not just the science aspect of it.
I got to tell you that's really clear in your Forever Strong programming. Like, you do an unbelievable job of giving the athlete or the client a number of different options with a given exercise. You kind of describe it. You say, if this is too hard, try this. This is too easy, try this. Try it with a Bosu ball behind you because maybe you have crappy shoulders, or try it all the way flat because maybe your shoulders are fine. You do an awesome job of individualizing mass fitness. Really, kudos to you. That comes all the way
Thank
through.
you.
I could say that because I'm a client. Okay, then how do you take that small business mindset, you in a storage closet, and keep true to that while still managing this massive business?
Yeah, that was one thing that meant everything to me. As the physical space got bigger, the experience needed to stay the same. And I humbly say we were able to do that. And I think it was just because the clients always came first. When you do the right thing by people, and I genuinely believe this, we're in the people business. We're if you can't communicate, I used to think it was all about the X's and O's of training, and that's all I cared about was like, what's the best program and what's the best exercise. And as you do this longer and longer, you realize communication skills are the most important skills that you could have. Your ability to communicate in a clear, understanding, simple way with your client. Listen more than you talk. I do a lot of talking because I have a podcast and I do a lot of teaching. But if you observed the number one comment I get when people come and observe me training someone at my gym, whether it's a group or a one-on-one pro athlete client, the number one the feedback that I get the most, that I think people are the very surprised by, is I actually talk way less when I'm training clients. I listen way more than I'm talking. I ask a question, I listen. I want to hear what they have to say, what they're feeling, and then I make decisions based on that. Too many trainers, coaches, PTs, we talk. We want everyone to be impressed by what we know. And people don't, the old expression, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. That statement is what my business was all about. And whether I was in 500 square feet or 5,000 or 10,000, we always stayed true to that. It was about the client. It was about me listening more than I'm talking, doing what's right by them. And when you do that, we were able to keep that 500 square foot, tight knit family feel in 10,000 plus square feet, because we never lost that. We treated everyone like an individual. We knew everyone by name. It was a family atmosphere, and we genuinely cared. And that's how we were able to kind of keep the same feel regardless of the size of the facility.
I was gonna ask you. It's great to say that you want to put the client or patient first, and that's your secret to success. But I wanted actionable steps to how do you teach that? Some people have it kind of coming out of the womb, some people don't. But you answered it, Joe. You said one actionable item is listen. Another actionable item is care. So if you're one of these savants that is so awesome at pathophysiology and you step in front of a patient, you're like, oh God, like, oh, how do I make this a great experience? You really gave me the answer is listen, shut your mouth and listen, care, know their name, like ask. It's not about you, it's about them. But those are very actionable items that you can take. So all the PTs listening to this, you might have a 4.0 GPA. You may have graduated from the best grad school in the world. You got to follow the steps Joe just laid out. That is the secret to developing patient athlete buy-in and ultimately to your success. I think that's really well said by you.
Thank you. And if you would see it. If you come to my gym on any given day, you could hide in the closet, whether I know you're there or not. When clients walk into the gym, whether we have a group of 3 people coming in or 30, everyone's going to get greeted with their name and a question. And it doesn't have to be a big, long conversation because, again, if we have a class starting in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, you can't be having 20-minute conversations with everyone. But when they walk in, Joe, what's up, man? How you doing? Hey, how'd you feel after our last workout? I know we hit legs kind of hard. You saw it all? Just a quick little something that they know you give a shit. Oh, wow. They, even as big as this gym has gotten, with how many general pop clients have told me, man, with all those pro athletes you work with, it's so cool that you still give a shit about me. When I come in, you still ask me how I'm feeling, how my daughter's soccer game went this weekend. Like, those things go way further than most people realize. It's not just about the training. If you want to be great at training and have this amazing clientele, all these little things that really have nothing to do with training need to be done. So then you can show your clients, your expertise, what you got with your training. But you don't get there if they don't kind of know, like, and trust you first. And that know, like, and trust comes from those little things. Remember their name when they walk in, shake their hand, give them a fist bump, ask them how their daughter's soccer game went, quick little questions, and actually listen to the answers. Then you develop those long-term relationships. And right now, my clients, I'm training a guy today that I've been working with for 23 years. And then after that, I drive to Connecticut and I train Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, who we are going on year 16 for them. And then back to my private gym, my head coach, Calvin, works with one of Jeremy Zuda's former teammates from Rutgers, Steve Baharnis, who started training with me at 14 years old and is now 35-year-old adult, in the real world, who still trains with us to this day. So I'm not just talking shit over here. Like, these things work. I can't get rid of clients at this point. I can't take on anyone new because, this is going to sound arrogant, but it's true. If someone starts training with me, they're going to be with me 10 plus years at this point. I just know, because my last 10 clients I've had have been with me for 10 plus years.
It's awesome. That's awesome. It reminds me of, I went down to West Palm to spend time with Eric Cressy. And I was like a kid in a candy store. Yeah. I was so excited to be there, right? And Cressy walks in and I walk over to Cressy and I'm like trying to impress him and I'm trying to talk to him and trying to ask the right question, etc. And he turns to me and he's like, Yoni, thanks for coming down. I got to go coach. And he walks away from me. And that, that was a big deal to me because of what he went to do. Like, Noah Syndergaard had just walked in. He was about to get his lift on, and I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. Like, I'm no Noah Syndergaard. He walked away from me and went to a high schooler while Syndergaard warmed up, because that's what mattered to him. He didn't need to be talking to me. He didn't need to be talking to Noah. The kid who walked in was more important. So I've seen it from the greats. That's awesome to hear. Okay, I want to get a little clinical with you, okay? Not that knowledge was not unbelievable and so important for our PTs to hear. Your Forever Strong programming is awesome because of the efficiency. I also really appreciate the thought you put into the warm-up. It's almost like you put more effort into the warm-up for it to match your workout than you do in the hardcore lifting part of your Forever Strong programming. So walk me through the way you think about warm-ups and what an ideal warm-up is for a given session. And this is so important because we have patients coming in. We got 45 minutes. We got to warm them up. We got to lift, right? How do we hit what's important and then move on to what's next?
Yeah, one of my kind of training longevity, I have if you've probably seen on each of our workouts, I don't know how many people actually read it all the time, but we have our longevity commandments that pop up on the app. Like they're in your face because we want people to see them, remember them. And one of them is never skip your warm up. It is a recipe for disaster. So that's number one. And it might sound simple, and I'm sure you've seen it, especially with the general pop clientele. They come in with the low back issue or the knee issue or the shoulder issue. What happened? I was pressed for time. I just got right into my workout. I tweaked my low back. Like, by saving that 5 minutes, you just set yourself back, whatever, 6 weeks, 6 months, maybe worse. Who knows? So never skip your warm up. Now, to give people some general guidelines, we have an 8-step process that we get into it much more specifically in our CPPS certification for trainers and coaches that really want to understand the nuance. But I'll give everyone the good stuff for right now. A, don't ever skip your warm up. B, start slow and progress to faster. That's one of my rules. Start with general movements and progress to specific movements. That's very important. Generally speaking, because again, everyone's going to be different, but generally speaking, think of if you cut your body in half, front and back, the muscles that you see when you look in the mirror, generally we want to mobilize those because we sit all day, we're kind of flexed, hunched forward, we're on our computers, we're on our phones. So mobilize the muscles you could see when you look in the mirror and kind of prime/strengthen the muscles you can't see when you look in the mirror. And then you always want to finish with something explosive. It doesn't have to be crazy. Again, depends on the clientele. Are you working with a young athlete or someone in their 50s coming off of an injury? It's going to be different, but something a little bit faster to wake up the nervous system. Doesn't have to be complicated. It could be a simple med ball slam, a box jump, choose your poison, but something a little bit quicker to prime the CNS. And then whatever your first exercise is, you want to rehearse that movement. Don't just throw your working weight on the bar and get right into it. You want to do a few warm-up sets, and the stronger you are, the more warm-up sets you will need. But that's kind of a general overview of where your mind should be when you're designing a warm-up for yourself. And even that's the abbreviated version, and it still might sound like I just rambled off 5 or 6 things. And you've seen this in our warm-ups. With all that being said, you could have an extensive, or I should say a very quality workout without it being extensive from a time frame standpoint. We could squeeze that in 5-6 minutes. You could have a full body sweat, muscles primed, ready to go. It doesn't have to be a 30-40 minute ordeal. If you know what you're doing, it could be very efficient. And we do that. We have all levels of warm-ups from 4 to 6 minutes all the way up to 30 or 40 minutes if we want a more extensive warm-up. But choose what's appropriate for that day, that workout. Just never skip your freaking warm-up because it never ends well.
I think there's a lot of gold in there. Obviously, that's the biggest point is don't skip it. The other thing is the way you move from slow to fast. I've definitely seen that. Can't tell you how many damn plyo push-ups I've done off of a bench because you're programming. Sick of that one. Please move on from that. So I think that's a great rubric. Also, it makes so much sense. Like at True Sports, we have one-on-one for 45 minutes every single session. If you only need 5 minutes to warm up, that gives you 40 minutes to get to your meat and potatoes. It's a great way to do it, but you can't just throw crap against the wall and see what sticks, because that's when you waste your time. And now you're 20 minutes into a session, you don't have enough time to load. So once we
I'm sorry, can I just add one more thing very important I just remembered? You want your, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, especially in my more recent programming, you want the warm up to kind of blend into the workout. It doesn't have to be the two distinctly different things like, oh, this is the warm up and it kind of sucks and it's boring, and then I get into my workout. We like it to blend into the workout. And now you see things like, I use the term pump and prime circuits, where we might do a 5-6 minute warm up. And then, just as an example, if you were going to lift upper body and the bench press was going to be your main lift for that day, my old programming, the bench press would be the very first movement in the workout. Now I'm going to have 1A, 1B, and maybe 1C is going to be something like a banded face pull, a plyo push up, and maybe a light tricep push down, or something where I'm going to prime and pump the muscles that are the prime movers in that main lift without overly fatiguing them. So it's a nice way to blend the general warm up, get a little more specific. And what we found is, especially as you get older, now when you go into that bench press, your core temperature's increased, the muscles are warmed up, your CNS is primed, you're going to feel so much better. Your joints are going to feel so much better, as opposed to that first set where you're like, oh man, I don't know, my shoulder didn't feel great. I heard a couple snap, crackle, pops. It has been such a game changer, blending the warm up more into the workout instead of having two separate entities with our programming. If you haven't done that, I highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're over 35, 40 years old.
Yeah, dude, that partial range fly is like, but it's great. It does. It makes my pressing so much better, so much easier. I feel a million times better coming out. I think that's gold. And if you can do that on the rehab side, think about, you're talking about 35, 40-year-old joints. I'm talking about 16-year-old joints that I'm working with, let's say ACL. But if you can turn on the quad, turn on the hamstring, the knee, which was just insulted with a scalpel, is going to feel so much better when you get to your squat work and your loading phase. So I think that is awesome. I have watched in your programming, we were doing 5, 6, 7 sets, 5, 6 sets of flat bench. All of a sudden, she kind of shrunk up to 2 to 3 sets. And I really appreciate that. But what it did was it cut down on my entire time in the gym. It cuts down on my volume. I'm still seeing similar results from a hypertrophy strength standpoint. Tell me about what is our minimal effective dose when looking for hypertrophy. And the reason I bring up hypertrophy is because coming out of an ACL, we are obsessed with quad hypertrophy. What's the least I need to do?
Yeah, I think it depends on how hard you push yourself, right? So there's an inverse relationship between sets and volume and intensity. So I feel once we're fully warmed up, what I found right now, that 2 hard sets seems to be enough where you can get stronger, build muscle, but most importantly, and this is why I made the change from, I would say, normal volume or slightly higher. I've always been a little bit on, I think, lower volume, because people would look at my programs and say, oh, they don't look like much on paper, but then they go through the workout, they come to the gym, they train with us, and they go, oh, damn, that was harder than I thought. So I've always been a little more quality over quantity, but recently we've really cut down on the volume, and I've gone from an average of 3 to 4 working sets to 2 is what I found. 1 doesn't seem to be enough unless you really, really go hard. And most people don't. So I like that it gives you a little wiggle room. The 2 sets seems to be that sweet spot where we could build strength, build muscle, but again, recover. Because what I've learned now that I'm 50, and I learned this in my 40s, but especially now, it's not just what we can do, because I could still go to the gym and do 5 sets of everything, but my body doesn't like it 24 hours later, 48 hours later. That's when things don't feel good. My joints are screaming at me. Where always remember, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. It's not just what we could do, it's what we can recover from consistently for months, years, decades. And that's where my mindset is right now. It's not just like, hey, what can I do when I get to the gym? What am I able to complete? Because I could do some pretty hard shit still, but I'm ruined for a week afterwards. And I don't want that anymore. I want my training to enhance my life and my daily activities. I want my daily activities to be easier because of what I do in the gym, not harder, which is the meathead mentality I used to have, was beat the living shit out of yourself in the gym, and then you're kind of good for nothing outside of the gym. You're that typical meathead who's like, oh, I can't help you move your couch because I hit legs yesterday and my back is killing me. Like, I want to be the person that has some show, but the go to go along with the show. So that's where my mindset is now.
I mean, I love it because it totally pertains to what we do on a sports rehab side, right? Like if we get an ACL patient 3 days a week, I can't tell you how early on in my career I would blow them out on a Monday, and then Wednesday we're still recovering. So I think it's like a great use of this forever strong mentality. Even though you're talking about the 50-year-old or the gen pop that wants to move a couch, if you're dealing with an athlete that's coming back from surgery, they have to be able to perform again at a very high level on Wednesday and then on Friday. So think about these 2 sets. Think about that we're training so that we can recover, not we're training to put ourselves like out for a couple days. I think that goes a really long way. More holistically speaking, you have worked with a ton of patients coming out of rehab into strength. What are some of the mistakes that sports PTs are currently making?
The first one that pops right into my head before you even finish your sentence is just too much too soon. They, again, it's so similar how we talked about the warm-up blending into the workout. Well, I don't think it should be rehab, high-level strength and conditioning all the way over here. Yes, they can be on opposite ends of the spectrum. If we're talking about, in your example, someone just has ACL surgery 2 days ago, yeah, they're far on one end of the spectrum, and the quote-unquote healthy athlete that is in the off-season training, they're all the way on that other end. But it's fun. I don't know. Let me see if I have this picture that's so perfect. It's on my desk. It's perfect. I don't know if you could see this, but
yeah, I can see it. It's flipped, but I can see it. Physical therapy rehab. And it's a Venn diagram and where it crosses over to high performance strength and conditioning. And in the middle, you have shaded, it says 99% of
basically that's where we just gave the 2 examples.
Yep.
But where kind of 99% lives is in the middle of where it meets. And excuse my second grade drawing, but basically 2 circles that overlap. One end is the rehab, maybe early stages of rehab. Other end is high performance training with quote unquote healthy athletes. But if you work with athletes, rarely are they ever 100% healthy. Sure. But just for argument's sake, let's say a few of them exist. That's on the other end of the spectrum. But most of the time we're dealing in that middle area. That's 99% of our training as coaches. It's not as far away from the PT as we think. And with the PTs, you're not as far away from high level strength and conditioning as you think. Yep. It all blends together. And again, most athletes are going to be whether they, even if they're not just coming post-surgery fresh out of an ACL or whatever it may be, at one point they probably had an injury and things that nag them, and you're going to have to address that and be aware of it when you're designing their programming. You're not going to have someone that's 100% healthy and they're not, it's not like they're all coming off of a surgery a few days ago either. So it's generally in that middle area. And so we kind of need to be this, not to get on a tangent, but it's like we're all on the same team. It shouldn't be PTs on one end, strength coaches on the other. A lot of PTs think the strength coaches are kind of meathead mentality, too aggressive. And then the strength coaches think the PTs are too conservative and they don't know enough about getting jacked and strong and explosive. We all need to come together. We're on the same team, and we all need to borrow from each other, because most of training is in that middle gray area that I just showed with my horrible drawing, but that is really where most training occurs.
You're like a young Kamala Harris with your Venn diagrams. It's really unbelievable. I always say that a great sports PT is a great strength coach. A great strength coach is a great sports PT. You're absolutely right. Like, we need to meet and live in the middle.
Yes.
So I think that goes a long way. Okay, split squats, sleds, hinges. If you could only choose one early post-injury training to rebuild lower extremity strength, what are you choosing and why?
Well, I know people are going to hate this answer, but it really is going to depend on the client, the person, where I see we call it like a window of trainability. Like, what do they suck at the most? Like, I'll put it that way. If I see like their hinge sucks and it's like, oh wow, this athlete cannot hinge at all, let's put our time and effort there. That's probably where they're going to get the biggest bang for their buck, because if they made it this far and they can't even really do a body weight hinge, what's going to happen if we teach them to do it properly? We get the proper musculature stronger, we mobilize where we need to mobilize. That's going to have a bigger carryover for them. Whereas vice versa, someone has a perfect hinge, but they're doing a lunge and they're wobbling all over the place. Let's put our time and energy there, because that's probably going to have the best bang for our training buck. So I know people get annoyed when I'm constantly saying it depends, but that's how I program. And that's really how I look at things. Like, where are we going to get the best bang for our buck with this individual? That's where I'm going to spend my time. And with that example, you gave 3 great examples of exercises that we use and love and are staples. So if there was an exercise in there that I don't really like, I could maybe give you a more direct answer, like, oh, I rarely ever use that one. But those are 3 we program all the time. So if I had to pick one, it would depend on where that client lacked the most.
I don't hate that answer. I actually love that answer. And we always talk about rehab's really simple. Like, just figure out what your patient sucks at and make them better at that. And so sometimes we get elite level athletes and they can squat the house and they can't hinge. So that's where we want to live. Or even more simplistically, they're really strong and their balance blows. You need to spend time on their balance, because you're just trying to fill the buckets that are empty. That's going to make for a great session. When you haven't, people get so freaked out when they have elite athletes come in, because they're like, how am I going to make this guy better? Your task is to figure out where they suck, and that's going to, 1, make them a better athlete. 2, it's going to make the session really challenging for them. And really, that's what athletes love. They love being challenged. They love showing progress. You can do that. So I love your answer on that.
And I think you bring up a great point, just real quick. With the pro athlete thing, yes, if you work with enough pro athletes, some of them walk into your facility and you're just like, they're a different species than us. It's like, how are they so different? Like, we're all human beings, but how are they so much better than me in everything? It's wild. But there are areas that they do lack. You'll be surprised. Like a lot of them are amazing at the thing that they're amazing at, but you'll find areas. Even some of these big NFL offensive linemen, I've had a lot of freaks, but I'd say 50-50 freaks from a strength standpoint to very, very underwhelming when you test their strength. Like you're like, man, they never had a formalized strength training program. They might have went to a smaller high school and they were the big farm boy who grew, bigger and taller than everyone else. And they developed the technical skill of being an offensive lineman. But I got to tell you, I've had some NFL linemen that were 5-6 years into their NFL career, and the most basic strength and mobility training helped them improve because they're great at football. They're not great at weight room or lifting. And for some of them, the most general training helped them so much because they already had amazing technical skill at their sport. Obviously, they're a professional athlete, but they lacked the GPP, if you will. And by just raising that capacity, they ended up putting 3-4 years on their career. So it's not always, yes, some are freaks and it's like, holy shit, how do I get this guy better? But there's a lot of them that do have areas that they haven't worked on. And that's where we could come in and really help them out.
Who's the most complete athlete you have seen from a mobility, skill, strength, power standpoint?
I'll tell you what, and I only worked with him he came in with Brian Cushing for a couple sessions. But do you remember Connor Barwin?
No, but
if you know that name,
I know Cushing.
He was a defensive end, outside linebacker, kind of hybrid with the Texans. I think he was drafted the year after Cush, and then he played for the Eagles. But just like tall, lean, but strong as hell in the weight room, but endurance for days. Jump through the roof, fast, rangy, long arms, but could still bench press and squat. Like it was just like one of those freaks.
So what do you do with him? How do you challenge him?
Yeah, that's the thing. He had some, and again, he was only in town for a couple of days. He wasn't a steady client of mine, but I'm sure even with him, he had some injuries in college that I remember him talking to me about, and things like that never really fully healed. So those are areas you could, again, find those one or two things that you can help him with. And then even just maintaining like his ability to be a freak. Cause I also think the mental, I know with like a Brian Cushing, some people used to criticize how heavy and hard he lifted while they say he's already in the NFL. Like why you're taking years off of his career. And there's some merit to that. I think that's another nuanced argument where you don't want to use up all their capacity, all their energy. Like, oh, if I could get him to go from a 550-pound squat to a 580-pound squat, he'd be so much better. No, you're just now we're just sucking energy away from other things that our time could definitely be better spent. But what made him was his strength and his power. Like that was his thing. So mentally, he didn't feel good unless he was doing dynamic effort box squats in season and having some weight on his back. There are other NFL guys that are like, I'm not putting a barbell on my back in season. I feel like I get tight. I get sore. I don't like it. He loved it and felt better with that. So that's where the art of coaching and the psychology and the human aspects come in. We could have 10 different NFL guys, 5 of them train one way, 5 of them train the other, because the psychological aspect is a whole nother podcast that, we could have a whole nother discussion on. but it's just as important as the physical stuff. So these are all those like little nuanced things. When people see a 30-second clip on YouTube and they all comment and they think they're experts, these are conversations we're having behind the scenes that you're not in on, and there's more to it than you realize from that 30-second clip.
Yeah. I mean, those are great examples. It bleeds into the CPPS football specific cert. Can you just give me like some overview as to what's included there? Because I've been treating NFL athletes for the last 10, 12 years. What am I going to gain from the CPPS football outlook?
Everything. That's like, I say it's like a PhD in football training, and I say it jokingly, but it really, if there was a PhD course in training a football player, it wouldn't be far off from that certification. That is like my life's work. Smitty, who partnered with me on that one. The quick answer is it's everything. It's 365 days from the early off season to the off season to the preseason to in season, strength training, speed training, mobility training, warm-ups, recovery, post game, different specifications for different positions, because while you're training football players and they're all playing the same sport, a wide receiver may as well be a different sport than a lineman.
Yep.
Versus a quarterback versus a kicker. So there's a lot of nuance within the positions of the sport. And all I could say is we just cover it all. It's not just a strength training program. It's a 52-week programming that includes everything: strength, speed, mobility, recovery, hypertrophy for those who need to pack on some muscle, nutrition, hydration for camp, in season, off season. It really is basically everything you need to know to train a football player.
That is gold. And I love the way you point out how different these athletes are on the field. Like, you make the point of wide receiver to O lineman, totally different. I spent a lot of time working with specialists. Like, I call them very strong ballerinas. It's crazy what they do right on the field. And it's so different from the O-line. Like, people don't even think about it. So that's awesome. I even saw like the way you break down the specifics of combine training. I think from a sports PT, like, we get a lot of these guys, we're doing recovery stuff leading in combine training, knowing how to perform the test, what makes a good test, what kind of motions and mobility and strength needs to be present in those given tests, helps us so much on the rehab standpoint. Because just like your warm-ups are geared towards your lifts, so too our rehab should be geared towards the given task at hand. And when it's combine, it's not really football. It's this whole other world, right? So I got to get my PhD in football training.
I'm glad you brought that up. There's so many we also cover testing. If you want to have a conditioning test for your football players, it's such a shame how old and outdated, like the main tests for football, the 16 110s, the 300-yard shuttles. Football is an alactic sport. The average play, and I did this myself. I'm sure you could find different studies online, but I literally sat and watched a football game with a stopwatch and timed every play, every rest interval. And we're talking on average 5 seconds or slightly under is the average play, with 30 plus from 30 seconds up to 10 minutes in between plays and series. And our main test for a football player for conditioning is a 300-yard shuttle. Like, we mentioned Brian Cushing, longtime client of mine, and I freaking love him. He was a beast. I think we have the quote in the CPPS football course where he says, if it's ever third and 300, take me out of the game, because that's not what I'm built for. Like, you're never going to run 300 yards on a football field in a single play. The amount of plays that last 10 seconds in the court. There might be one or two each year, in an NFL game, yet we're doing 16 110s and 300-yard shuttles. It's insane.
So as a guy who worked with a long snapper who blew his Achilles on a 300-yard shuttle, you can understand like my frustration.
Oh my God. Yeah. That I'm frustrated and I don't even know who you're talking about. That's just,
he's one of the best. Yeah. He's one of the best humans I know. So my question is, why is it still like that, Joe? Why does the NFL still look like that?
I wish I had an answer, because listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I say it all the time. I got 890 on my SATs. I'm not that naturally bright, but when I could figure out, like, it makes no sense. There's not an answer. All I could think of is laziness. This is what my coach did with me. And if you ask that coach, this is what my coach did with me. This is what we've been doing forever. And just because there are some things that are tried and true, and there's good reason they've been around for 100 years, but 300-yard shuttles and 16 110s and gassers ain't one of them. And so I don't even have an answer other than ignorance and laziness, because it makes zero common sense. You don't need to be a savant in anatomy, physiology, energy systems to know those tests make no sense. At least have tests that match the energy system of the sport. Then we could argue, you could come up with 10 different tests, I could come up with 10 different ones, and we could argue which is better, which is more specific. But can we at least get the energy system right and then go from there? But we're not even there yet. Like, we're doing the opposite. We're training the opposite energy system, which, by the way, for maybe younger PTs or coaches listening, when you hear a coach say, well, it's that just builds the foundation for our no, that's like saying, well, I'm gonna play tennis to build my foundation for football. Like, no, it's two completely different things. It doesn't build the foundation. You're training something completely opposite. It does nothing to build the foundation.
It really infuriates me. A close second is the fact that they have maybe 5 physical therapists on staff for a roster in camp of 90 guys. And I'm like looking at their rehab stuff. Like, that's how I hung out with Zoot. Like, it's so crazy to me what the owners are providing to their players. When you tell me you want to win, and like you said, your best ability is your availability, then invest in that. Like, bring schmucks like me in. I promise I'm more affordable than the one game the guy's going to miss. Like, if he is not rehab properly, it drives me nuts. Okay, Joe, I could talk to you forever. I didn't even get into whether you ever considered going to Turkey to get a hair transplant. But maybe that's another pod. Okay, fine. But I do appreciate having a fellow bald on here. Okay, last question.
Embrace it.
Clearly I have. My last question to you: why do we have so many ACL and Achilles injuries, and what would you do to change it in the NFL?
Again, I don't know. I think anyone.
You might have just answered it in your previous rant, but go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, also, where my brain goes, I don't want to get on another rant, but man, one thing when just asking that question, my biggest pet peeve in this industry is PTs and strength coaches alike who try to cash in on injuries and make it look like if you would have just done their program, they take all these injuries and then they show them in slow motion. And if you would have trained with me, this wouldn't have happened. That is so infuriating to me, especially in a sport like football that is just a violent collision sport where, yes, both you and I, we give a shit. I do everything in my power to try to prevent injury when we get these athletes in the off season. I wish there was something we could do to 100% prevent injuries, but we can't. And with a lot of these, do we know 100% it's because of the turf? It's because of how they trained or how they didn't train. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever know. But one thing I do know from just my lens and what I see is the too much too soon thing and just overdoing it, and strength coaches and coaches in general more trying to get their ego in the way, and they want to impress the players instead of genuinely help them. I want to show you how much of a badass I am, so I'm going to kick the shit out of you when you come to my gym. That type of training and mentality, I think, while we can't prevent injuries from happening, and I don't think we'll ever really know why certain injuries happen on our end, controlling the controllables, what we can do is have a nice periodized progressive plan that starts in the very early stages of the off season and slowly and gradually progresses as the season gets closer, and then intelligent in-season training. And if we put the athletes' health and success first and know that we are only here, we have jobs because of them. It is about them. It's not about us and us trying to make a name for ourselves by, doing something different or being the most hardcore, most badass strength coach or having the most badass gym. When we put the client and the athlete first, I think that would help. Will it prevent injuries? No, but instead of just trying to impress them and do too much too soon and beat the shit out of them when they come to your gym, if we really cared and did what's right instead of letting our ego get in the way, I think that would help. But I still don't think there's any way we can, ever know exactly what's causing a lot of these injuries. I know with the younger kids, the playing one sport, it starts at that younger age. That's a different conversation where that I could confidently say it's not the only reason, but man, it's a big reason why you see so many younger kids getting injured. I'm seeing it with my daughter. I know better, but in order to play for the club soccer team, you have to play for this other team, and you have to travel, and you have to go to this tournament. And if you don't go to this tournament, colleges aren't going to look at you. Now I'm in a bind because I know it's right, but everyone else is doing it, so you have to do it. And I'm living through that with daughters in high school. So that's a whole nother conversation that I think if we started younger and exposed them to more sports at a younger age, man, that would, and then also leave time though for an actual off season where we're preparing the body for the physical demands of those sports, not just throwing them out on the field. Multiple sports with an off season at a younger age, man, that's going to lay a way better foundation for those few that do make it to the, a high level college or professional sports. They're going to be a little bit less likely to get injured as adults, compared to the kid who played one sport growing up and now they are the 1% that made it to the NFL or whatever it may be. And their body is just a ticking time bomb at that point.
Yes. Listen, systems thinking. I appreciate the outlook. Okay, Joe, I knew you'd be a pleasure, and you were. You taught me a ton. Tell everyone listening how they can find you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad we got to do this. This was a lot of fun. Much appreciated. So thank you. And I guess my Instagram at DeFranco's Gym is where I post the most free content. And if you go in my bio, you'll see the links to CPPS, my podcast, the Team Forever Strong, etc.
Love it. Joe, thank you so much for all you've done for the industry. Thanks for your time. Thanks for teaching us. Guys, I hope you love this as much as I did. Let us know what you loved. Let us know what you hated. Find this True Sports PT on Instagram. For now, bye-bye.